yield to U.S. demands, and the moratorium on nuclear and missile tests may be no more. Oh Jung-hee starts us off.
North Korea won't continue negotiating with the U.S. unless Washington takes some corresponding measures, and the regime's leader, Kim Jong-un, will soon announce whether the North will keep its moratorium on nuclear missile tests. That's from North Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee, who was part of Pyongyang's delegation at the second North Korea-U.S. summit in Hanoi. According to Russia's TASS news agency and AP, Choi urgently held a press conference on Friday, inviting foreign diplomats and journalists. Choi said North Korea is not willing to yield to U.S. demands, nor to engage in negotiations of this kind. According to Choi, Kim Jong-un and Trump had an amazing chemistry, but it was U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton who were uncompromising and created a hostile atmosphere. She clarified that Pyongyang never asked for sanctions to be lifted in their entirety. The vice minister stressed that Washington threw away a golden opportunity this time and urged the U.S. to change its stance. Regarding the recent missile-related moves, Choi said whether Pyongyang will continue or abandon its moratorium on nuclear missile tests is completely up to Kim Jong-un, and she expects him to make up his mind soon. While the North threatened to end negotiations with the U.S., it's noteworthy that Pyongyang did not blame President Trump for the Hanoi summit fallout, but instead placed the fault on Trump's close aides. With the ball now in Washington's court, eyes are now on how the Trump administration will respond to the North's warnings of possibly ending nuclear negotiations. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea is working to get in touch with officials in the north through various channels about those comments. Speaking to reporters while in Cambodia on an official trip with the president, the Chinese spokesperson said the president has been briefed on the North Korean officials, saying that Kim Jong-un might end his moratorium on missile launches and nuclear tests. He said the Presidential Security Office is taking multiple approaches to get a full understanding of the regime's comments and update the South Korean leader. What the top office wants is an understanding of the nuance of the regional wording and not the translated reports of foreign media. And Washington wants to continue its diplomacy with Pyongyang. U.S. Special Envoy to North Korea met with UN Security Council members to discuss the latest developments. Cha Sang-mi turns the spotlight to America's stance on matters linked to the regime.
U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun traveled to New York on Thursday to brief the UN Security Council on the outcome of the recent North Korea-U.S. summit in Vietnam's capital last month. During an hour-long meeting with 15 members of the UN Security Council, including the 5 permanent ones, China, France, Russia, the UK, and the US, Biegun reportedly called for the support of the Council to maintain dialogue with Pyongyang while trying to deter the regime from any provocations, citing the recent reconstruction movements at the North's previous missile test site. Biegun was said to have reaffirmed that the sanctions remain imposed on the regime until it comes out to denuclearize. Blaming North Korea's request for sanctions relief in their entirety, Biegun said Pyongyang and Washington couldn't sign an agreement in Hanoi, but that the talks were constructive and the door is open for dialogue for North Korea. The special envoy is also said to have mentioned the recent annual report on North Korea from a UN panel of experts released Monday, which said the North was successfully getting around UN sanctions through illegal ship-to-ship transfers. Meanwhile, Cho Tae-yeol, South Korea's ambassador to the UN, also participated in the meeting following the invitation from the UNSC due to the involvement in the denuclearization talks despite non-membership. Cho hosted lunch talks with Biegun the same day to discuss the latest developments. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
Seoul and Washington made progress on a planned reunion for families separated by the Korean War during their working group discussions. As this is a key cross-border project the government has been pushing, South Korea is expected to begin preparations soon. Park Hee-jun gets us up to speed with the developments.
South Korea may finally see some progress in holding inter-Korean video reunions of war-separated families. During the South Korea-U.S. working group session in Washington on Thursday local time, the U.S. granted an exemption for sanctions that allow shipments of equipment required for the reunions to the North. The UN Security Council also approved a sanctions waiver last week. With the green light, Seoul's Unification Ministry says it plans to start preparations and work on the details of the reunions with the North.
All sanctions-related procedures necessary for the video reunions of separated families are complete, so we can push ahead with preparations for the planned reunions.
The two sides also agreed on a sanctions waiver for the delivery of equipment needed to unearth historic relics from a joint excavation project located in the North Territory of Manorte. They will request approval from the UN Security Council. However, the two sides were unable to make progress on a group of South Koreans' trip to the Kaesong Industrial Complex. Earlier this month, some 180 business owners who ran projects there filed an application to review their assets in the Inter-Korean Industrial Park that was shut down in February 2016. Seoul and Washington are to continue discussions on the matter in parallel with the North's commitments on denuclearization. Although they made significant progress, the two sides still have their differences. South Korea stresses improved inter-Korean relations, while the U.S. prioritizes North Korea's denuclearization. As alliance partners, the two sides will continue close coordination on these issues. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
Uncertainties stemming from slowing growth at home and abroad continue to impact the local economy. Chip makers who played a key role in the nation's exports are also affected. Ko Ryuni zooms in on the latest Green Book.
South Korea's overall industrial production remains solid, but uncertainties over slower global economic growth and the semiconductor sector remain. This is according to the Finance Ministry's monthly Green Book report released on Friday. Until September 2018, the ministry had said the local economy was on a recovery path, but it has not used that term since October last year. Instead of the word recovery, the phrase positive momentum appeared in the latest report, citing uplifting figures related to production, consumption, and investment in facilities. For the month of January, overall industry production increased by 0.8% on month, mainly in the construction and services sectors. Retail sales also ticked up by 0.2% during the same period. Facilities investment, which is one of the key indicators that can be used to gauge economic strength, increased by 2.2%. The report also mentioned that Korea's exports in February fell by more than 11% on year, citing external uncertainties, including slower global economic growth. A report by the OECD released earlier this month said the world economy would grow by 3.3% in 2019, which is down from its previous forecast of 3.5%. The ongoing trade tensions and an erosion of business and consumer confidence were the main reasons for the fall. Another uncertainty came from the semiconductor sector, because chip exports make up a big portion of South Korea's exports. Analysts have been saying the slower growth of the global semiconductor market is due to weak demand and falling prices. The ministry said it will focus on promoting policies that will vitalize the economy, such as the government's plan to create a second venture boom in Korea. Ko Ryuni, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in is in Cambodia as part of his latest diplomacy tour. During a summit with his counterpart in that country, the two leaders agreed to boost bilateral economic cooperation while also pushing for peace on the Korean peninsula. Shin Se-min reports from Phnom Penh.
With the hope of firming up their countries' relations, South Korean President Moon Jae-in and his Cambodian counterpart, Prime Minister Hun Sen, have signed a series of deals to carry out joint studies in a range of fields like agriculture and finance. After a summit meeting, the two signed a 5-year agreement in areas including health, welfare, transportation, tourism, and education. The two also called for efforts to quickly conclude negotiations on a tax treaty to help promote investment. Also bringing the two sides closer together, their ties through the Mekong River.
이번에 처음 개최되는 한메콩 정상회의는 아세안의 개발 격차를 줄여서 진정한 통합을 촉진하자는 취지로 우리 훈센 총리께서 제안해 주신 것이어서 더욱 뜻깊습니다.
The president promised more support for Cambodia under his new southern policy, while adding that the kingdom is already the world's second largest destination for Seoul's official development aid.
I hope to take our bilateral relations to the next level. This is in line with Korea's new southern policy, which will help with mutual prosperity and unity as well as people-to-people ties.
More opportunities are lined up in the remainder of the year. Seoul will host a special South Korea-ASEAN summit marking the 30th anniversary of the establishment of dialogue between Seoul and the 10-member bloc. As for other mutual interests of the two, efforts to establish peace on the Korean peninsula and in the region. The South Korean leader said denuclearization will open up new opportunities for businesses by expanding the possibility of economic cooperation between the two nations. Situated along the resource-rich Mekong River, Cambodia has close ties with the markets of China, the rest of ASEAN, and India. It's a perfect destination for South Korean leaders' pivot to the ASEAN and India as he tries to build the relations under the three pillars of his policies: people, prosperity, and peace. From the banks of the Mekong, Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Phnom Penh.
Moving on to other stories now. For 3 months, Boeing 737 MAX aircraft will be banned from landing or taking off at local airports, as well as from passing through the country's airspace. This decision was made following 2 crashes involving the model over the past 5 months. On Thursday, the Transport Ministry notified airlines worldwide of the decision. Seoul's government also plans to ban any additional acquisitions of the model until it's proven to be safe. Over in New Zealand, deadly acts of terror took lives at 2 mosques. 49 people were killed as gunmen opened fire on Friday prayers. Kim Hye-sung has the latest on the worst mass shootings in the country's history.
49 people were killed and more than 20 wounded in shootings at 2 mosques on the southern island of New Zealand on Friday. New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern called the shootings a terrorist attack and said the country had been placed on its highest security threat level.
This is one of New Zealand's darkest days. Clearly, what has happened here is an extraordinary and unprecedented act of violence.
The shootings occurred in 2 locations, 2 mosques in Christchurch, one at El Noor Mosque and one at Linwood Mosque.
Our police have those locations locked down. 4 are in custody. 3 are men and 1 is a woman, as I understand it.
An attacker is believed to have live-streamed at least one of the attacks, which showed him driving to one mosque, entering it and shooting randomly at people inside. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison said one of the suspects in what he called a right-wing extremist attack was an Australian-born citizen. New Zealand authorities said they will not be discussing the offender's possible motivations or the causes of the incident at this stage. But they added that the situation is still evolving and advised all mosques in the country to shut down until further notice. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
Today is the initial deadline for the electoral reform bill to be put on fast track. Rival parties have been working until the very last minute to come up with an agreement, but it seems unlikely that they'll meet halfway. Kim Mo-gyun has more from Parliament.
Korea's ruling Democratic Party and 3 opposition parties, but not the main opposition Liberty Korea Party, are still negotiating their joint proposal on reforming the electoral system on their initial deadline of Friday.
The 4 parties will meet today to come up with a final joint electoral reform proposal. We were originally supposed to fast-track the proposal today, but we needed more time in the negotiation process. We will work to come up with the joint proposal as soon as possible.
Initially, the parties had set Friday as their fast-track deadline, as it takes a maximum 330 days to automatically put a contested bill up for a vote at the plenary session. So the joint proposal had to be finished by Friday in order to be applied to next year's general elections. Friday was also the date when the parliamentary panel commissioned by the National Election Commission was obliged to submit a proposal on the demarcation of the constituencies, as the parliament is supposed to finalize the electoral precincts at least a year before the general election on April 15, 2020. But with just a few hours remaining in the working day, the deadlines are not likely to be met. The 4 parties have generally agreed to adopt a mixed-member proportional representation system in which parliamentary seats are tied to the percentage of voters' support for different parties, but they are still clashing on the details. Several lawmakers from centrist Parimira Party and the Party for Democracy and Peace are divided over whether to accept the ruling party's proposal of a loser system, under which the total number of parliamentary seats would remain at 300, but proportional representation seats would increase from the current 47 seats to 75. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party has been flatly opposing the introduction of the system. It held a picket rally early Friday morning, calling for other opposition parties not to accept the ruling party's proposal, which it claims is a symbol of the end of democracy in the parliament. The joint proposal might not have been ready by Friday's deadline, but there's still room for it to be fast-tracked, as the National Assembly Speaker has the authority to shorten the 330-day period to 270 days, buying more time for further negotiations. Kim Mo-gyan, Arirang News.
Turning our attention to the widening sex scandal involving K-pop stars, former Big Bang member Seungri and singer Jung Joon-young were released after being grilled by the police. What has surfaced so far seems to be just the tip of the iceberg. Kim Da-mi provides a closer look.
K-pop star Seungri, who has been accused of arranging sex services for potential business partners, was released this morning after 16 hours of questioning by the police. Speaking to the press as he left Seoul Police Headquarters, the former Big Bang member said he promises to sincerely cooperate with the police even by delaying his military service, which was due to begin on March 25th.
I will officially request to delay my mandatory military service today. If allowed, I will delay military enlistment and diligently cooperate with the investigation until the end.
Singer and TV star Jung Joon-young, who was questioned on the same day as Seungri, also spent the night at the police station. Returning home after 21 hours of questioning over his alleged illegal filming of his sexual encounters, Jung mentioned that he surrendered what he has called his golden phone, which he reportedly used only for messaging.
I've turned in the center of attention, the so-called golden phone, and I've told the police everything, truthfully.
Earlier on Thursday, the Supreme Public Prosecutor's Office announced that Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office will now investigate the cases of the two K-pop stars, as it was requested by Anti-Corruption and Civil Rights Commission on Monday. According to the police, another group chat involving Seungri and Jung Joon-young made around July 2016 mentioned that a high-ranking police official had their backs. Although the title of the official was misstated in the message, police have confirmed that the official is a police commissioner general. In addition to the two K-pop stars, other Korean artists, including Yong Jun-hyung and Choi Jong-hoon, have retired from Korea's music industry, as they have also admitted to watching videos of Jung having sex with women without their consent. And as more messages and group chats are uncovered, the K-pop sex video scandal is deepening by the day. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
For people living with disabilities, getting around can be a daily struggle. That's why Seoul City recently upgraded its taxi service for such citizens, enabling them to book a wheelchair-accessible cab using only their voices. Oh Soo-young shows us how they work.
Hey 클로바, 장애인 콜택시 불러줘.
네, 지금 장애인 콜택시를 불러드릴게요.
It only takes a few moments to book a wheelchair-accessible taxi for disabled people in Seoul using a voice assistant service. The Voiceonly function was added this month to the city's taxi hailing service for persons with disabilities. Developed by telecom carrier LGU+, the feature can be used on smartphones as well as AI speakers. It isn't just a matter of convenience. It's a life-changing function for people with severe disabilities like Iwon-jun.
I cannot move my hands at all, so even when my phone's right next to me, I can't easily book a cab. But now, I can simply use my voice to get a cab, which I rely on to get around.
Since 2003, Seoul City has been running a taxi service for persons with grade 1 to 2 brain disorders or physical disabilities.
This call centre in Eastern Seoul receives and processes around 4,000 calls a day. Nearly 500 taxis are ready to pick up passengers within an hour of their call.
The rates are highly subsidised by the city government, costing less than $1.50 to travel 5 kilometres and $2.50 for 10 kilometres.
We began with about 100 taxis and around 30 to 40,000 users, but now the numbers have grown fourfold, reaching 1.2 million annually.
With Korea set to revamp its policies on welfare for the disabled later this year, demand for the taxi service is expected to surge. Seoul City aims to increase the number of specialised taxis as well as refine service aspects such as waiting time. It will also continue working with LGU Plus to improve voice-enabled calls.
We aim to reduce the technological gap between people with and without disabilities. We plan to add features for people with visual disabilities as well as emergency services.
AI-based services like these are expected to expand nationwide, as the central government plans to develop more services to accommodate the needs with people with disabilities. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The LA Philharmonic is performing in Seoul this weekend, a part of the orchestra's world tour in celebration of its centennial. Many international classical music stars will be featured. Lee Min-sun provides a glimpse of what to expect.
One of the world's most influential conductors, Gustav Dudamel, will lead the Los Angeles Philharmonic in 3 concerts in Seoul starting this Saturday. Seoul was chosen as one of 6 cities on 3 continents, the others being Tokyo, Edinburgh, London, Mexico City, and New York City, to celebrate as the orchestra turns 100 years old.
Seoul is a place that has a very special place in my heart, because the warm, the lovely audience, music is beauty. We love to share that magic moment of discovering music and having the chance to change or to build our life.
The first concert on Saturday at the Seoul Arts Center, Dudamel will conduct Gustav Mahler's Symphony No. 1, also known as the Titan. Chinese pianist Yu Jia-wang will play a new piece composed specifically for her by the modern composer John Adams, called Must the Devil Have All the Good Tunes? The second concert will be at the Olympic Gymnastics Arena, where they will play more popular music that will be familiar to a wider audience. In tribute to legendary film composer John Williams, they will play excerpts from the original soundtracks of Hollywood movies like Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Jaws, accompanied by clips from the movies on a giant screen. And finally, on Monday, Yu Jia-wang and Korean-American violinist Esther Yu will give a chamber concert at Lotte Concert Hall. The program includes Death and the Maiden by Franz Schubert and a violin sonata by Richard Strauss. South Koreans are known as big fans of classical music, and those lucky enough to get tickets are looking forward to a chance to experience some world-class music. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it was supposed to rain today in the afternoon, but instead we are getting something else.
Yes, Daniel. Now the cold front has turned raindrops into hail in various parts of the country. That includes the capital. Now throughout the evening, Seoul and the surrounding areas will get 1 to 5 centimeters of snow, while heavier precipitation is expected in Gangwon province. Now the rest of the southern coast will get between 5 and 30 millimeters of rain with some gusty winds. And the rainstorm will clear up before Saturday, so by tomorrow afternoon, Korea will be under mostly clear skies. And meanwhile, clouds with occasional showers are expected for Tokyo. And Seoul will be waking up to 0 degrees Celsius tomorrow, Chuncheon at -3, while Daegu and Gyeongju begins at 3 and 2 degrees respectively. And the weather will be pleasant by the afternoon as the nation's temperatures get to boost into the teens. And the southern regions will see more spring showers next week, and a nationwide downpour is in store by middle of next week. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could pack into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for watching. Here's wishing you a great weekend.